Hang on a minute, it looks like we've got a couple of special guests here today. Wow. Welcome to Lot 76 Cars. My name's Simon and today we're at Brooklands again for the Best of British events. So some great cars already arriving here, some of which are behind me, quite a few more to come. Join me and I'll take you around the show and we'll try and see a lot more of the cars and have a chat with a few of the owners. So this little beauty is an ash green, it's peppermint green, it's actually called ash green, MGA from 1958. It's a twin cam replacing the pushrod engine, which was a little bit asthmatic. This is apparently a very rare car, being I think a high compression ratio vehicle. Let's just have a quick look inside it. I do love the colour of this car, it's in superb order. It's had very few owners, apparently one of the owners had it for 39 years. So it looks like it's had a very idyllic life. What a lovely car that is, isn't it? So this MGR V8 is one of 1983 produced at Rover's Cowley plant. Incredibly, 80% of these, or 79% to be precise, actually went for export to Japan. Many of these have returned, as you'll see, many fitted with air conditioning, got that fabulous V8 engine. Road tests of the time praised the engine, but perhaps the chassis was from a different age. But what a lovely car that one is. So this beautiful car is a Humber Imperial. It's based on the Super Snipe. It's a 1966, so from the year of the World Cup. We'll have a chat with the owners shortly, but these cars have got a superb amount of refinements and it's staggering the amount of innovations this car had on, given it's from back in 66, and it shows what a force the Roots group were, to be honest with you. Some absolutely unique features here. Love those twin headlamps. It was actually owned by a millionaire. The first owner of the vehicle was actually a millionaire. So we're going to talk to the owner in a second, as I mentioned, but first of all, let me challenge you to find where the filler cap is, because I've just been challenged on finding where the filler cap is. So we're going to ask the owner to show us. So let's have a look. Any clues? No, neither have I. Okay, let's ask an expert. So the expert is going to show us this is where the filler cap is. I bet none of you saw that coming, did you? I certainly didn't. Fantastic. So I'm here with Steve Lewis, who's going to tell me about this fantastic Humber Imperial. My dad had one of these back in the day, and he was telling me about the division between the seats, you know, the show. But this is quite an advanced car, Stephen, isn't it?
Yes, this is the Humber Imperial. Obviously you could have had a Super Snipe available at the time, but in 1964 Humber wanted to sort of upgrade the car a little bit more to compete with the likes of Vandenpla and Jaguar, so they brought about the Imperial. So it's got the vinyl roof on the outside, has a cloth headlining above us.
Wow.
You could have leather or cloth seats. These ones are cloth seats.
I love the seats. This seat material is lovely, isn't it?
That indeed, lamb's wool.
Lamb's wool. Lamb's wool
indeed.
seats. Wow.
That's
okay.
Automatic was standard, and you also had power steering was standard as well, and also unusually you had a switch here called Selector Ride, and they had special Lockheed adjustable shock absorbers at the back which were electrically operated, and that would give you 4 different levels of hardness for the ride. Today it's a little bit imperceptible, you can't really tell, but it's supposed to give you 4 different levels of ride quality.
So Roots were really ahead of the time with this car, weren't they, in terms of the refinements?
Throw extras on, that's it. And on the back seats you had the map reading lights. There's a separate rug on the back floor for the punters as well, and of course you've got the standard picnic tables for them as well, and a separate heating unit in the back as well.
I tell you what, I mean, sat in these seats now, to me guys, this feels extremely comfortable. There's a centre armrest here as well.
That's it.
I'll cut in some pictures of that in a second, but it's a really nice car. How long have you had the car?
I've had it about 20 years now.
Wow. And you wanted it because you'd had one back in the day? Or?
Yeah, no, I always liked the Imperials, and fortunately at that time I managed to be in a position where, regrettably, the car was already well known within the club circles, but the person had passed away.
Okay.
And I happened to be in a good position to be able to take it on and keep it in the style it was accustomed to being
Well,
kept.
it sounds like you're a great custodian to it.
Yeah, I'm an historian for the club as well. So.
Oh, fantastic. So shout out to the club. That's the Humber
Post Vintage Humber Car Club.
Post Vintage Humber Car Club. So that'd be great. Thank you very much.
That's a pleasure.
Thank you. Cheers. So following the Audax series of minxes, Roots introduced this Super Minx, which spawned a number of different brands, as Roots were prone to do. You can see that it's obviously got the influence of the American styling still, despite it being a relatively smaller car. On the back, that fantastic curve around back window. Love that colour. What a lovely car. Now these are arguably some of the prettiest of the Audax series cars. This is a Singer Gazelle. Again, as I mentioned many times, you know, Roots were masters of badge engineering. But these convertibles just look so classy, don't they? I love this one with this white over blue, light blue, and hopefully with a bit of luck the sun will come out, as we've been promised, a bit later today, and the owner can take the convertible top down. Clothed by Giuseppe Giugiaro in his Bertoni days and packing a 300 brake horsepower engine, this is probably one of the rarest cars you're ever going to see. They actually built 99, or sometimes some people say 100 from parts that were left. The standout symbol for this one that probably many people will know is the tortoise. Now, as I said, they built 99 of them, and there's almost about 10% of world production here. Built down in Southampton. Unfortunately, the company did go out of business, but what that great combination it has of an Italian styled body, an American muscle car engine. We've almost got one colour, one example of every colour. Looking at this, I'm going to try and have a chat with one or some of the owners, because these guys are basically, they've got one of the rarest cars that you're pretty much going to see. Fantastic. So there we are. Shout out to the Gordon Keeble Owners Club. What a turnout, guys. So this is chassis number 1, the first Gordon Keeble. We're going to have a chat with the owner about it in a second, so let's get him to tell us a little bit more about the car. So this is John, and he's got Gordon Keeble number 1 behind us. So I'm just going to put the camera onto John, and we're just going to find a bit more about this. It looks like it's an original Autocar test car from back in the day. It survived along with a few others here today. Tell us about it, John.
Well, the car I bought about 3 years ago, it had been restored in the early 90s and then put into storage. So it had 30 years in storage, and then I bought it during COVID times, dragged it out the storage, and although it had been completely restored, a lot of the things really needed doing again, because the fuel system needed a strip down, the electrics, everything like that. So we stripped it down, the brakes, everything, hydraulics, fuel lines, everything got changed. Didn't touch the body, didn't touch the interior, but just the mechanics got a good going over. And here it is today.
And these are pretty unique cars, aren't they? I mean, in terms of, it's debatable how many they were built and how many survive. Any ideas on the numbers?
Oh, 90 survive.
90 survive.
We know where 90 are, and they may not all be running, but we've got a list of, you know, some have gone to Australia or New Zealand or America, but we've tracked down 90 of them.
That's an incredible survival rate, isn't it?
For the 50th anniversary, they actually got 50 together.
Wow. Where was that, in the UK?
That was in the UK, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
So
fantastic. Thanks very much for talking to us about it. Thank you. Cheers.
Okay.
I'm just going to... Now, rest assured, you're not going to see too many of these here today. It's a 1952 Rolls-Royce Silver Wraith. Absolutely lovely, isn't it? It's very patriotic, celebrating the Coronation. Getting a lot of attention here, as you can see. And afternoon tea is being served. So one of the oldest Rolls Royces in the world is this 1908 Silver Dawn, which has been brought here by P&A Wood, heritage Rolls Royce specialists. You know, really from the birth of the motor car. Absolutely lovely, isn't it? We'll try and take a look around this one. These sort of really vintage cars are not something we see at these events. Can you imagine being sat with those controls in front of you on those sumptuous leather seats in the front? It's absolutely stunning. Look at some of the detail on there. It's immense. Fuel gauge is passengers keeping an eye on the fuel gauge, and you're going to struggle to see something like this very often, and particularly, as you can see here, a little bit close up. Sorry about that. We're getting a bit crowded here. Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful, isn't it? Wow, that's a one-off. Some cars still arriving here, so stick with us. We've got quite a bit still to see. Fantastic, lovely Series 1 E-Type. That sounds great, doesn't it? Series 1, it's got the closed-in headlamps. So, favourite car of Queen and Margaret Thatcher, allegedly, and other Prime Ministers as well, is this Rover P6. This is a P6B, so it'll have the small block Buick V8, 3.5 litre, and it is the particularly attractive coupe version. That's absolutely glorious, isn't it? That's a beauty. So if you want an indication how much cars have grown, we've got a Jaguar XK8, XJS underpinnings, styled by Ian Callum, and next to it we've got a tiny little Colin Chapman era Lotus Elan Sprint, and then next to that we've got a Rolls Royce. Only recently launched is this Lotus Emira, succeeding the Evora and the Elise. This is going to be Lotus's last internal combustion engine. Yeah, you heard that right. Two engine options on this, a smaller capacity BMW engine, and then the more familiar Toyota V6 engine, which they've been using for a while. You know, it is a modern car. It's not solely classic cars here today, but honestly, it's got some beautiful features. Love how you can see the engine right through there. Finished in, I guess that's got to be Norfolk mustard. What a car. Got some lovely design features. That scalloped rear panel and those lights. So yes, the last combustion engined Lotus. Stunning. So here we've got a 1954 Jaguar XK120 fixed head coupe, one of about 195 left. Apparently the 120, as many people will know, relating to the top speed. What a fantastic car. How this must have wowed people when it was shown, I think, at the 1948 Earl's Court Motor Show. I bet they were absolutely blown away by that, weren't they? Amazing. So this company, Alvis, is still manufacturing vehicles. BMC bought the business, and then strangely enough they didn't actually go any further with it. The plans and the box to build the body still remain, and fortunately they're building these again at a price you can still buy one. I think this is a TD15, and a very lovely Rover P6. This is not an S, so it's a 3500, so it's got to have the automatic box, which many of them had. Yes, indeed it does. Bolt-on body panels, very easy to fix, but unfortunately they do potentially rust underneath there. But yeah, this one's in fantastic condition. Not sure about the year. So we'll try not to get run over filming a TVR Cigaris. Some people have got dustbin lids smaller than the diameter of that tailpipe. That is incredible. So real fantastic mix of cars, from a Mark III Healey 3000, Series 1.5 Jag, Austin 12.4 from 1933, I think that one is. Found derelict in Basingstoke in 1995, it said. Interesting. An AC, I think this is one of the AC Bristols. So for a period of time, it was an AC body, I believe, mated to a Bristol engine. So we're just going to try and get that in shot. So you can see the AC Ace spawned the Cobra with a larger engine, but this is a relatively rare car as well. If I find the stats on that one, I'll stick them on screen. But I know that we're seeing something that's relatively unusual there, in that it's this AC Bristol. Not many people knew those two companies worked together. And this is an Austin A40 Woody. For reasons I don't need to explain why it's a Woody, it looks like it's been lowered a little bit, doesn't it? So, let's try and get a shot around the back of that one to the side. Riley 1.5. Next to a Series 3 Jensen Interceptor. Well, that's both ends of the scale, isn't it there? Not sure if that's the full 7-litre one. I filmed with these guys here last year and absolutely blown away by some of the cars. They are amazing cars. You just don't get them low volume series manufacture like this with Italian styling. I think the styling was Vignali from memory. And next to that, a lovely little Mini. So Triumph launched the TR6, which was basically a restyle, I think, of the TR4, 4A, TR5. And this one was, the styling was updated by Carmen in Germany, hence the change in tail treatment and front lamps. Lovely in primrose yellow, isn't it? So during the 90s, Lotus experienced yet more turbulence in their history. They produced the M100 Elan Series 1 car with an Isuzu engine, either turbocharged or normally aspirated. Normally aspirated, are fairly thin in number. At the end of production, when they ceased production, they discovered somehow they've got lots of engines left. And hence, this vehicle is the one that I guess wasn't really planned at the beginning. It's a Elan Series 2 car in this lovely amethyst sort of purpley colour. Quite unusual. I'm not sure if it's turbocharged or not. I expect it's probably a turbo car. So this lovely car is a Zephyr 6. We'll try and have a chat with somebody about this one. 6, I'm presuming, because it's the 6-cylinder. Let's have a look inside. It's got the bench seat, and I think it's probably got the column gear change, as most cars seem to have. Quite a bit of space in the back of that one. Oh, lovely car. Fantastic Mark II Cortina. These are the ones that tend to survive. It's a 1600E, and you don't find too many of the standard cars in actual fact. The 1600Es have been quite well preserved. So this is a Standard Vanguard. Now Standard was the company that took over Triumph when Triumph was ailing. Now this one's in RAF colours. Now I do believe the RAF actually purchased many of these back in period. So we'll try and have a chat with the owner about this one. I mean, these are relatively rare cars these days. We'll see what he's got to say about it. I've got to ask him if it is actually an RAF car or not. It's certainly got all the markings. So I'm with Jeff, who's going to tell us about a little bit about this RAF marked Standard Vanguard Mark III. Jeff, tell us about it, because it is an RAF car, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I bought it from a guy off eBay. He bought it at auction, Silverstone Auctions, as an ex-RAF car. So I'm firmly convinced that it was, because I don't think the auction companies would dare to sort of advertise something that wasn't what they say it is, obviously because of litigation or whatever. And I've had it for about 9 months to a year. Just recommissioned it, really. And do we know how many of these cars the RAF bought back in the day and what they used them for? I really don't. I know they used them operational for bomber crews and fighter crews to get them to the aircrafts and their kit. I think that's why they used the estate car, because they could load them up at the back. What a great idea. And again, supplied in RAF colours as well. Yes. Well, that's right. The standard, the colour from standard cars was so close to the RAF colour that they just bought blue ones. that were part of their range, the blue range.
What a good idea. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you very much. Thanks
That's
for talking to us
wonderful.
about it.
Thank you.
So Andy's going to tell us about this fabulous Mini Marcos. Andy, tell us about this fabulous car.
Well, it's really nice to drive. It looks as if it looks a lot smaller than it is. You know, it's quite comfortable to drive. I've been to Le Mans about 3 or 4 times with it, taking the camping gear. It all fits in there, and that's it. It's just a very nice car, and it's fun and it's quick.
So you had one back in period, or
Back
in the day, you know?
No, I mainly went for big Jags, you know, when I was a lot younger. But we've also got a 3-litre Marcus and a 4-litre Marcus.
You've got the full set.
Well, nearly. Yeah.
So this is a Gilbin 1800 GT built in Wales by a Welsh butcher and a German prisoner of war that never went home. It's an absolutely fabulous story as well as a fabulous car. It was one of the first cars you could buy under £1,000 at the time that would top 110 miles per hour. Got some lovely features here. Somebody's obviously had these Gilbin spotlight covers made. This company went out of business in the early 70s, but the cars do survive quite well. So let's have a look at this one from the back. This, I think, is a 1966 car. Obviously deference to the fact it was built in Wales. Not sure how many manufacturers built cars in Wales. And it's got this sort of, maybe it uses MGB or Farina rear lamps on it. It certainly is a distinctive car, particularly in that colour. What a great car, what a great story. Sporting just a 2-litre engine and reminiscent of BMWs of the period is this Bristol. I think there was some tie-up with Fraser Nash, but the design rights to some of the BMWs were sold. It's got that sort of semi-American Beetleback styling, I guess, reminiscent of the period. That's a great looking car though, isn't it? So Reliant decided to produce a drop-top version of the Scimitar SE6, which we'll be familiar with. This is launched, I think, under the SE8A, and it's the cabriolet version. It was apparently very well received by the press at the time. You will see quite a few of the Scimitar sort of estate body styles, but you will see very few of these, it seems. So what are we looking at here, guys? Is it a Spitfire? What is it? In actual fact, it's a Reliant Sabre 6, so built out of cooperation with a company called Autocars in Israel and Reliant. I think later fitted with a Zodiac engine, sold in the UK in small numbers. In fact, I believe only, from what I've seen on the car, only 44 of these were sold. What an incredible car. It's got echoes of a number of other cars in there, and from a distance you wouldn't recognise it as being from the Reliant family. But yes, it proudly wears the Sabre badge. What an incredibly unusual car that is. Absolutely glorious, isn't it? So Donald Healey had a hand in many cars. With Austin, with Jensen he worked, but this is a 1952 Healey Tickford, and it's fitted with a 2.5 litre Riley engine. You can see that distinctive Healey grille. It looks like a sort of Tourer by the look of it as well. Let's just have a look around the back, see if we can take a look around there. Reminiscent of some Jaguars of the period as well, I guess, isn't it? And believe it or not, this is also a Reliant Sabre. This is probably an earlier car, looking at the styling of the front. Yeah, you know, a car built in such small numbers, and I've seen 2 of them here today. Let's try and take a look at it from the back as well. Quite a nice cabin in there. As you can see, I can see where it looks so similar to some other British sports cars of the day. I'd be interested. So where would we be without a Triumph Dolomite Sprint, 16 valve head? Quite a fast car at the time, I think, hit something like 160 miles an hour around the Myra track. Really was a competitor in touring cars. Sadly, you know, maligned by some of the British Leyland issues of the day, but nevertheless, in that colour, it looks absolutely glorious. So looking like you need to take a taxi from the back to the front is this Zodiac. It's absolutely huge. There are very few of these. This predated the Granada, the first Granada. This is a K, so what would that make it? 71, 72 in this great sort of russet bronze colour. It's an amazing looking car. Well, it's certainly got some very interesting style, and there's no question the car's going to have plenty of room in it, and it might be fun to park. It's huge. Now these were produced by Midas. This is Midas Gold. The company was owned by a guy called Harold Dermott, and so impressed was Gordon Murray that he actually bought one of these, I think fitted with an Alpha engine. Normally it runs with the Mini drivetrain. It is very unfair to call these a kit car because they were very, very thoroughly engineered cars. Absolutely brilliant. It's on a Q plate, as many cars were. I recognise the rear lights as coming from a TR7. So the owner of this Midas Gold is John. He's going to tell us a bit more about the car because the story behind this car is absolutely fascinating. So please keep watching for this one.
Okay.
John, tell us about this car.
Well, the story really starts with a chap called Dizzy Adicott, who was a test pilot and who was a member of Brooklands Club as well here. And he designed and built a little racing car based on a Mini, which he called the Dart, Dizzy Adicott Racing Team. And he thought this was pretty good. He thought, if I get a mould made from this, I could get these produced in fiberglass. So he went to Jem Marsh.
Of Marcos fame.
Yeah. And Jem, he gave a contract to Jem to produce the moulds and 2 cars, 2 body shells, which Jem Marsh completed. Dizzy Adicott was a perfectionist and he wasn't entirely satisfied with the result. So he never proceeded further, and he sold the project on to a guy called Jeremy Delmar Morgan, who then took on the project and produced his version, which he called the Mini Gem because his nickname was Jeremy. Meanwhile, Jem Marsh thought this is a good idea. He'd obviously freaked his own body shell out of the mould, and he then started producing the Mini Marcos.
Wow.
So these 2 kit cars were produced in parallel, the Mini Marcos and the Mini Gem, basically the same car.
Wow.
The story then goes on when a chap called Harold Dermott, who was an engineer with Jaguar, he wanted to get out of his work in Jaguar and establish his own business. He bought the Mini Marcos project and he started building them in Oldham. And it was his company was called D&H Fiberglass Techniques, I think. But then he got a grant from a local authority to set up a factory in Corby,
Okay.
near Northampton. And they had a premises there on an industrial estate. So he asked a designer, I think it was, his name was Oakes, was it? Gordon Oakes, I'm not sure now, to reconfigure the design to make it stronger and more modern, and he came up with this design, which they then called the Midas.
Wow.
This particular one is.
And you mentioned Gordon Murray had a
Gordon
hand in this.
Murray, Gordon Murray, yes.
Gordon Murray designed this.
Was involved in the design.
So
yes.
no wonder Gordon Murray has one in his garage with an Alpha engine in.
He does, yes.
What a fabulous. So this is a rare TBR Vixen Series 3. I think it's been raced in rally. We're going to have a chat with the owner. It's quite an early car. Absolutely lovely styling. Typical of TVRs of that period as well, that sort of short wheelbase. Let's try and get some shots. Now I recognise those tail lights are from a Mark II Cortina, aren't they? Lovely. Let's try and have a chat with the owner and see if he can tell us a bit more about it. So I'm going to have a chat with John, who actually owns this fantastic TVR. I've seen it once before at another show, so obviously I've got a good memory, better than I thought. So he's going to tell us a little bit more about it. John, tell us about this fabulous car, because I've seen this before. It's an early one, but you've been rallying in it or racing in it?
Yeah, I bought the car as a student when I was at the University of Sussex in 1989. It was built in June 1971, and it had 9 previous owners. So since '89, it's had 1 previous owner, and that's been me. And it was a terrible, terrible mess when I first bought it. It was undrivable, but I still tried to drive it even though it was undrivable. And I was involved in motorsport at the time, doing road events, what's called 12 cars and scatters and treasure hunts. So I started using it for those kind of events, and used it for sprints, hill climbs, production car trials, auto tests, anything I could really do with it apart from circuit racing. So it's had a long history of road rallying, mainly nighttime road rallies starting at 11 at night and finishing at 7 in the morning. It's totally unsuitable for that because of its ground clearance problems and other things, but we were pretty competitive in it, and we did events in Wales, got laughed at in Wales at various events. They didn't think we'd even finish, but
you did.
Eventually I made it quite reliable. The biggest problem initially was electrics, being a GRP car, glass reinforced plastic car. Yeah, everything needs 2 lots of wires. And eventually in '98 I took it off the road and started rebuilding it, and in 2001 it was sort of finished. So the paintwork you can see behind was done by a boat builder in Caversham, and it's Norfolk mustard or
Lotus colour. Yeah.
A lotus colour. The original yellow is not quite as vibrant as this, and also this is a modern paint. So the actual paint job here is from 1998, and it looks the same as it was.
Excellent. Well, it looks absolutely glorious. So thanks for talking to us about it. Much appreciated. So out in force today, the TVR Club, and they're really well represented with early cars and also with late cars like this one. Oh, this one's for sale. Okay, better skip on past that one. We haven't quite got the budget to cover that one off. I'm going to pause a bit further down because there's one of the cars quite interesting. I think this is a Grand Tourer. Old cars and the smell of petrol just goes together. But this 430 SE is the last of the wedge shape TVRs. So incredibly powerful car using the Rover engine, using the Rover V8 engine. Got that massive rear spoiler on it, you wouldn't mistake it for anything else. Like a sort of diffuser going on there at the back. Yeah, put in the comments what those rear lights are. I think I should know that, but I'm struggling. They're obviously off a standard production car of some sort. Brilliant looking interior. That looks quite a nice place to be, isn't it? A lot of the things like the handbrake lever and the gear lever were machined in aluminium to save TVR buying parts in from the parts bin, and they're quite distinctive because of it. It is a stunning looking car, a bit softer than the original wedges like this one next to us here that you can see for comparison, with that lovely beige leather interior. Now this is where I get my TVRs confused, and it's a Griffith, Camara, Cigaris. That's a lovely looking car, isn't it? That deserves a thumbnail on somebody's video. And the list goes on. It's amazing to think that this now defunct in its original form Blackpool company is hopefully going to reproduce cars at some stage. Well, they keep promising that, don't they? But what a fabulous back catalogue TVR actually have. they produced some absolutely outrageous designs. Apparently, from the clay model of this car, you see, look at these scallops on here where the indicator is. Apparently Peter Wheeler's dog bit the model they had of the car and they kept the design. Now, even if it's not true, it's a great story, isn't it? So, produced under the guidance of the eccentric Tony Crook, sold off Kensington High Street many years ago. Customers bought them by appointment. You interviewed to see if you could buy one. This is a Bristol, and it's a lovely, lovely car. You'll see that front wing is quite big because I believe the spare wheel is there. Quite a big car inside, but then again it's a big car on the outside as well. Exclusive cars built in very, very small numbers. I've never been in one. I'd love to have a go. So badge Cortina rather than console Cortina like some of the early cars, is this, I believe, a 66, it's D. Very nice, light blue Cortina Mark 1. It's the airflow car, so it's got the different grille that the later cars picked up to improve airflow to the cabin, and it's still got those famous Ban the Bomb lights, which some of the early TVRs used as well. So this Mark II 1600 Super automatic Cortina is a Crayford. It looks like a genuine Crayford. I've seen Crayford recreations, but this one is certainly badged as Crayford. Looking at the car, owner's got a full tonneau cover. He's not risking the weather today, is he? And quite a sensible person he is too. But there we go. There's the Crayford badging. So this is a 3.5 litre 1993 Marcus Manchula. Towards the end of Marcus, so Marcus failed in 2001, blaming the exchange rates at the time. So this would be, as I say, towards the back end of this, the back end of production. It's got a fabulous beige leather interior, so a shout out to Joseph Lloyd. You're going to like that one, Joseph. Let's just have a look at the interior. That fantastic walnut dash, big transmission tunnel, tiny steering wheel, central filler cap at the back. Quite a decent looking boot from the outside anyway. So often mistaked for the Mark II Jaguar. Many of these met their end on different episodes of the Sweeney. It's a Jaguar S-Type. Arguably the rear suspension on these is way more sophisticated than it is on the Mark II Jaguars, and in fact a better car in many ways. Dare I say it? Well, I just did. I think values of these and interest in these cars is starting to increase now, as people are seeing that the rarity of these is really appealing, and as I say, it's according to the experts, it's a better car. So this is a Feb 1969 G-plated Mark I Capri, one of the first ever registered in the UK. This one's actually been at some stage reunited with its first owner, who exchanged it, part exchanged it for his needs with a growing family at the time. So we've got this fabulous early car, and then we've got two 1600 Mark Is, both in the same colour. Now I have to put in the comments, I don't know what that colour is, but I do like it, that sort of light green metallic, and two almost identical cars next to each other. That's fantastic. And showing the diversity here, we've got a Mark I Lotus Elise. Hard to believe that car was launched back in 1995, isn't it? Now seriously, you wouldn't expect me to walk past a Mark I Granada and not make some inappropriate comment about the Sweeney. Well, sorry, I'm going to disappoint you, but I'm certainly not going to walk past it. This colour combination is an unusual one. It's got those spot lamps at the front. It's an M, so it's a 74 car, but the colour combination, the roof, I'm guessing that might be an ex-South African car. If it's your car or you know, then please drop it in the comments. Nevertheless, I do like a Mark I Ford Granada. in case you hadn't noticed. So this isn't a TVR, it's actually Ginetta, based now up in Leeds and producing quite serious race cars in sort of this body style. You can still buy these even today, although Ginetta have got a very, very long history. That's quite some car, isn't it? So we've got a Jensen 541, this one with the 4-litre Austin engine, and as I may have pointed out before, some really unique features. We've got that grille that opens to from a button inside the car, or a knob inside the car, to let more air in, or close it off from the air to warm up sooner. And we've got these relatively unusual but certainly groundbreaking at the time Perspex windows. Now, there was a time in the UK when you didn't need to have a full car licence to drive a three-wheeler. I think this was sort of aimed at those times. It's a Bond Bug. I've only ever seen them in orange. I think they were only ever produced in orange. I'm not sure how stable they were. They've got an absolutely fantastic owners club. The whole front tips up to reveal the vehicle. There's obviously to reveal access to the vehicle, and not much in the way of sound padding in there or trim, but doesn't it look great? So designed under the codename Mosquito by Alec Isigonis and launched in 1948 is the Morris Minor. This is a later car, and this particular car is unusual, and it wasn't always a convertible. It was actually converted from a standard saloon car body by the famous Morris Minor restorers Charles Ware down in Bath, I think. Incredible looking car though, isn't it? They've obviously done a very good job with the conversion. Who doesn't like a Morris Minor convertible? So, in amongst some of the exotica is this fantastic Rover R8, an incredibly popular car for Rover, this pre-facelift car without that grille that was added afterwards, which is a bit questionable. This one's in great condition. You know, we used to see them everywhere, and now we don't see them anywhere at all. What a great car. So this MGB was developed by Jack Coombe, a Belgian coach builder. We'll have a chat with the owner about this. It is very unusual. What a pretty car.
It's an MGB Jacques Coombe Bellinetta. So in 1965 it was taken off the production line. It was an MGB, went to Belgium, and Jacques Coombe did the coach work on it. He did 56 before MG made a GT. And then when the GT came about, they stopped because this was too expensive.
It must have been incredibly expensive in the day.
Yeah.
Do you know how much?
I don't know, no.
And you've had the car a long time?
My father brought it back from Belgium in the 80s.
Wow.
It had been hit by a tram, so it was all scrunched. And he took so long to restore it that he passed away in 2017 with the car partly finished.
Wow.
So we've finished it as he wanted it to be.
Oh, what a lovely story. And the colour's the original, its original colour?
No, it was red when he brought it back from Belgium. He wanted it this colour. This is an Aston Martin colour. But a lot of them, there's meant to be 14 left, are silver, pale blue, metallic. So they are in those sorts of shades anyway.
Many in the UK, or is this the only one?
No, 3 or 4 I think, possibly. I've met two others. We had it parked at Gaydon last year with a Belgian one and a German one. I think there's a couple in the UK.
Oh, that's absolutely fabulous. Well, thank you for telling us about
You're
it. It's
welcome.
really unusual. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your time. So we're actually celebrating another birthday here today. So the MG car company, Morris Garages, established by Cecil Kimber back in 1923, is actually celebrating its 100th birthday. So we'll take a look around the cars in this section and try and point out a few highlights for you. Arriving just 3 years after the demise of the well-loved MGB is this MG badged MG Metro. Now this car is a Mark II car, so the earliest cars were on sale in 83. This looks like it's an 89. Love that sort of body coloured body kit. Those lattice wheels. Interesting graphics on the side. And to be fair, you know, this kept the MG brand alive. Probably, had Rover Group not done this, that brand might not have survived and evolved into the brand that it is today. So this, in fact, isn't what it seems. Isn't an MGB Roadster. It's an MGC, and under that bonnet is a 6-cylinder BMC engine, 3 litres, I believe. This was designed as the high performance version of the MGB. I think they only built the car for about a couple of years. It had some poor press, to be honest with you, which may be unfairly attributed to it. The engine added quite a lot of weight. Performance was a big increase. In fact, the car was then fitted with a 140 mile an hour speedo, but it didn't really take off, and it was only when the MGB got the Rover V8, the small block Buick V8 engine, that it actually got a long-standing high-performance derivative. Nevertheless, great to see it here. So you can see by the badging on the front of this car, this is the MGB that the high-performance derivative should always have been, with the small block Buick V8 engine in. This was the one to have. It's an earlier car, so it'd be a 74 car with the chrome bumpers rather than the rubber bumpers. I think the V8 was built with both rubber and chrome bumpers, to be honest with you. Not huge numbers of the cars on the road, but I can imagine quite a desirable car with a fair bit of performance. So here's the first of 2 pre-production MGFs built for the press office at MG Rover. The red car, not sure what the shade is, and the amethyst car there. So this was a real return to form, and in actual fact the response from the critics to this car, with its hydrogas suspension and its mid-engine layout, actually was pretty good as a driver's car. And these cars just on the verge of starting to be appreciated, and you can see why. Relatively accessible, quite comfortable day to day, and quite a pretty car. So produced really as a final vehicle from the Abingdon plant. This is one of the MGB GT LEs. So we have the MGB GTs that were produced in this pewter colour, and the Roadsters were produced in metallic bronze. They gain the stripes on the side here. I think it's got a special interior, and it looks like it's got that overdrive button on the gearbox as well. And of course round the back it's got the usual MGB hatch. So by the time this car was produced, for a car that was launched in the early 60s, that was an incredibly long production run. And in fact, I'm not sure if any other sports cars actually rivaled that. Maybe the Fiat, some of the Fiat's Sport Spiders or something like that perhaps. So we're here today celebrating the 100th anniversary of MG. In actual fact, this car celebrated the 50th anniversary. So it's already 50 years old. It is a MGB GT Jubilee Edition. That's great. Distinctive because of those gold wheels and that gold stripe. And in fact, there's 2 here. There's this car as well. I do love that colour scheme. If I was going to have an MGB, I'd certainly want to seek out one of these very distinctive looking Jubilee editions. So MGB also have a history of saloon cars that dates back. This is a YB model. Now these ran from, I think, from 51 to 53. So I would say the styling is quite pre-war rather than post-war, to be honest with you. But great to see MG saloons represented here as well today. And here we've got the MG T register. We've got about a dozen cars here today. proudly displayed. Not sure how far some of these have come, but it's great that people keep these on the road. And I think we've got some MGTDs over there. Let's have a look at those as well. And here we've got the MGT register. We've got about a dozen cars here today, proudly displayed. Not sure how far some of these have come, but it's great that people keep these on the road. And I think we've got some MGTDs over there. Let's have a look at those as well. So this was the last of the MGT series cars, this TF Midget from the early 50s, and this was the last T-Series car produced before the MGA actually took over. So interesting to see that that styling's got a faintly pre-war feel about it. In fact, these cars were used even by police forces. The lack of performance saloons meant that these undertook police duties. This particular car has been featured in TV series, and it's actually been featured in Little Britain according to the owner. So it was also called, the Midget name was used as well, so it wasn't the later car that just had the Midget name, it was these earlier cars as well. It's in beautiful condition in Old English white, isn't it? So this was the last of the MGT series cars, this TF Midget from the early 50s, and this was the last T-Series car produced before the MGA actually took over. So interesting to see that that styling's got a faintly pre-war feel about it. In fact, these cars were used even by police forces. The lack of performance saloons meant that these undertook police duties. This particular car has been featured in TV series, and it's actually been featured in Little Britain according to the owner. So it was also called, the Midget name was used as well, so it wasn't the later car that just had the Midget name, it was these earlier cars as well. It's in beautiful condition in Old English white, isn't it? So apparently the sum of just $3,995 will get you this absolutely lovely Sunbeam Talbot. Isn't that a pretty car? So looking like an original Lotus 7 is this beauty. It's got those steel wheels with the hood caps on. No alloy wheels here. Fabulous quote. Adding power makes you faster on the straights. Subtracting weight makes you faster everywhere. From the famous Colin Chapman. That's a lovely car, isn't it? Looks like it's seen some track action looking at this one as well. Glorious colour scheme. So these are Sunbeam Tigers, and basically the Roots Group asked Carroll Shelby, yes, the Carroll Shelby, to help them engineer a vehicle that would be a high performance derivative of their Alpine model, and his solution was stick in a bigger Ford V8 engine, which they did. So the proposal that he made is that he would actually build these cars for Roots Group. In actual fact, Roots Group decided not to, and they actually contracted out manufacturing of these lovely cars to the Jensen Company. And there's quite a few of these here today. Now, I think towards the end of production, when Chrysler took over the operations of Roots Group in the UK, they eventually decided having a Ford V8 engine in their sports car wasn't really what they wanted to do, and being Chrysler, I think they brought things to a close. So thanks again for joining me on Lot 76 Cars at the Best of British event at Brooklands. Hope you've enjoyed the cars you've seen today. Hope you've enjoyed the owner interviews, finding out a bit more about the stories behind the cars. Please like, share, subscribe, put on notifications so you don't miss future videos, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks for watching.